Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, lovely people. We are here with another episode of our Ask the Expert series. And today I'm really happy to have Adrian back with me. Adrian, can you quickly introduce yourself? Because people will have seen you before, constantly get new people in. So enlighten us with a quick introduction, please.
Sure, yeah, thank you. And it's always so lovely to be here on the show with you. So yeah, firstly, Adrian, just a little bit of a background. I've got a blended family of 6 adult children. I've got 4 granddaughters, and my first grandson's on the way. So I'm looking forward to that. Yeah, and for the last 20, for the last 20 years, I've been working in the space of being a coach and a psychotherapist and counselor, and a lot of experience working around the grief space and working with people in a spiritual support space. A lot of my work is based around spirituality, and just in some context of some of the work I've done around sort of death and dying and grief. I work with Dr. Ian Gawler for several years in Victoria in a cancer retreat centre. So of course we came across a lot of passing and a lot of grief support, and I've got some background from that, but particularly in my psychotherapy and counselling. I'm working with different levels of grief all the time. And of course, one of the biggest griefs people go through is the loss of a family member or a partner, and that's or a good friend. And it can be really devastating. So hopefully I can impart some of my experience, some of my wisdoms and insights into the film today.
Absolutely. I'm absolutely certain you will. And thank you so much for being here. I so appreciate you giving up your time once a month to be with us and to have a bit of a chat with me about topics that are really pressing in our group. And for me, it is so beautiful to have an expert come in from a different background in terms of education, but then also being in a similar field, and that spirituality approach is something that we both have in common. And that's why I think it works well having you here and discussing these things. Now, Adrian, in our last chat that we had, we actually already touched on this topic, and those of you in here following us along might remember where I said, that's already the topic that I've chosen for next month. And that was the topic of loneliness, because this is something that comes up as one of the biggest challenges for a lot of people who are going through grief. A lot of people talk about this emptiness, and I certainly have my fair share to say about that as well. Yet this is not what I got you here for. So I want you to jump in, because we had a bit of a discussion in the forefield, and he said you have a few nuggets prepared for us, so I'm just going to hand it straight to you. Sure. What is your take on dealing with loneliness in terms of grief?
Yeah, so look, the first thing in terms of a context, what I thought about the last few days, what I've been preparing for being on here today, was how can we define loneliness? And the word I came up with, Marie, that I feel like is the strongest word to really define loneliness is disconnected. Because when one is in that loneliness space, it's like the disconnect is there, disconnect from the person that we're no longer with.
That hits home.
Family. So just for today, if we can change that word sort of loneliness for disconnected, we'll give it more understanding and impact. And then the word alone, for me, can come in 2 aspects. One is a loneliness, sort of aloneness in terms of being bereft and lost, and what other words have I got here, and unsupported. And the other aspect of being alone, there can be some power in being alone. Like I know when I go bush for myself for 2 or 3 days,
I agree.
Technically alone, there's a strength there. So alone has got sort of the 2 meanings, the alone in terms of power and strength, and then also alone in terms of bereft. And then loneliness, as I suggested, is more the disconnected feeling. I sort of put it into 3 different camps, so we can discuss those 3 different aspects of.
I really like you do that, because I don't know how everybody else is feeling, but I certainly have my moments where I really crave alone time, me time. That's maybe we can refer to that as me time. The being alone and having the me time, the disconnect. And what was your 3rd category that you came up with?
Probably alone in the sense of being bereft and forlorn and lost. And that's that real sense of alone rather than loneliness. So there is a
Yeah.
slight differentiation between those two words.
I
So
like
sort
that you do
of-
that. Yeah, agrees with me. Yeah.
Yeah. So let's begin with, if you like, loneliness.
Hmm.
That sense of disconnect, and from
Yeah.
a, if you like, from a slightly sort of metaphysical perspective, what happens
Mhm.
when we're with a loved one, a partner, a close friend, an energy forms where we become sort of united. We have that unity,
Mhm.
particularly in partnerships. You know, it's like that yin and yang come together.
Mm.
We form something that's uniquely special.
Mhm.
And when that other half is then suddenly not there, that can be that absolute time of feeling that disconnect. I'm no
Mm.
longer feeling whole. I'm only
Yeah.
feeling, part of the sum rather than wholesome, because that other person in my life who made up that other part of
Yeah.
me, life, is no longer there. And when we
Mm.
feel that disconnect, and that can happen even in, divorce and separation, that
Yeah.
takes time to get used to that um, new shell, that new,
Mm. The
um,
new you.
a new container, that new you,
Yeah.
without
Yeah.
that a significant person in one's life. And that
Mm.
that can be very devastating.
Yeah.
On some level, it also can be some relief for some people who were maybe in not such a great relationship or
Yeah.
situation with somebody. So although the grief is there, and we touched on this a little bit a few sessions ago,
Mm.
there's a sense of grief, but also there's a sense of relief.
Mm.
And I think it's good to weigh up everybody's individual situation in terms of
Yeah.
loneliness and go, well,
Yeah.
am I now able to stand more alone in my relationship
Mm.
because I am a little bit free, because my partner maybe wasn't, the greatest supporting person in the world. People,
Yeah.
they were partners for, different reasons, and sometimes it's not
Yeah.
healthy. But then
Yeah.
for other people, it's like, no, I really was there. My partner was so there for me
Mm.
that now I'm missing that. And
I'm
that's,
really glad that you touched on that, Adrian. I want to thank you for that, because there is a little bit of that where people feel guilty speaking up about that, and it takes them some time to work through and to process that they realize there is actually also a sense of relief. And I actually want to bring something else in, and would love to hear if that aligns with you too, because there's also often people who've looked after somebody for a really, really long time who might have been either disabled or might have been really sick, and there is this care factor, and so often the whole attention is on the person who is sick or who is terminally ill or dying, and the person who's actually the carer doesn't get the same support, unfortunately. And often that person is the one that's completely crumbling and often feeling lonely already, while their partner, their child, their loved one is still around them. And then when that person actually dies, there is a sense of relief, but there's huge guilt to actually allow themselves to feel that, because everybody would say, I'd rather have them with me and still care for them than them dying. So I'm really glad that we can address that very openly here, because I feel people need to be allowed to feel that relief as well, and to have that pat on the back and a big cuddle and say, you've done such an amazing job, and now it's your time.
Yeah.
And that part, I think a lot of people struggle with and now it's my time.
Yeah, that's big one, because, if you are caring of somebody, particularly if it's been for a certain amount of time, then it becomes sort of a little bit of a sense of a purpose. I'm sort of here for my partner for the next months or years, and it becomes
100%.
a little bit. And then when one lose that label of the purpose, that can be an intense time of, suddenly being alone or feeling loneliness, because the purpose is gone, the purpose of being a carer.
And because it's so intense as well,
Yeah.
and when that drops off, there's this feeling of emptiness, of loneliness.
Yeah. So one part I want to talk about, and to bring in some key things of what I call adjustment. How do we adjust in that? And look, we may not ever get back to the same place of loving somebody or caring somebody as much as we did for that loved one. But if we can go to the next level, you might have to sort of drop a level to still give some caring, give some attention, and receive attention. So it's about that readjustment process, I think, is really, really important. How do we readjust and then maybe give that caring, loving nature that we have, or that connect we had? How can we find that and replace that with something new? And it could be a dog, a cat, or a new friend, or a new something in one's life, so we can still have that sense of connection with something. It may not be the same as it was with that person, but to still have some form of connect with something. That's going to be individualized for everybody. A lot of people jump into new relationships very quickly to find that to find that connection. Other people are a bit tentative about stepping into that reconnection in a having, intimate sexual way. But everybody's individual, and I think it's about moving beyond judgment and really looking at where the judgment's coming from internally, so externally, and really taking some time, maybe some journaling or seeing a professional and saying, I want to look at the judgment, because as you know, and I know, the judgment is a huge one in this sphere.
Oh yeah, I just had a huge epiphany myself 2 days ago. So yeah. Oh my God.
And
so
maybe
harsh on ourselves with judgment. It's incredible. Yeah.
Maybe to share some of that, Maria, with the people listening in, of when we have those epiphany moments, when we have that aha moment, sometimes when we share those moments, it helps others, because they go, well, if Maria and others can do it, then maybe too. So is there something perhaps that you've had an epiphany or an experience on?
I'm happy to share, actually. Yeah, I didn't think that would come up here in this session at all, but I'm super happy to share, because I'm always very, very open about my learnings and my epiphanies too. I was actually sitting in our momentum call. We've got like a momentum call with my mentoring group once a week, and we talk about how to keep our momentum up and how to. So there was one thing where she brought in the topic of judgment, and how it is important for us, in particular for people who are in a sort of leadership position, like me, for example, in the group Loving Love After Loss. There's 3,500 people in there, and I love sharing content with them to inspire them. So of course I need to look after myself and keep my energy clean, my mindset clean, to be able to do that. And I'm only human. I've got my moments of ups and downs. And I said to her, the last 2 weeks, I felt really, I don't know, like, when she said judgment, like what comes up, I said, I was scared straight away. It's like, so what are you scared of? And I'm like, I don't know. It's really interesting. So we talk a little bit through it. And then she got to this moment where she took everyone in the call. There was like 10 of us in a Zoom call, and said something about them, like, who do you think, what you can do? And like, she went through like judgment, and I sat there and I just smiled. I was actually really proud of all the things she said. I'm like, well, I know who I am to be able to do all that. I've been through my growth. I've been through my grief. I've been through. And then all of a sudden I had this epiphany. I'm like, wow, I'm not scared of judgment of others, because I feel very solid and very confident in the path I have chosen. I was scared of my own judgment. I was like, wow, I was scared of my own judgment, that I would be going like, who do you think you are, Marie? Who do you think that you can do that you can run those retreats, that you do this? But looking back, well, I know who I am, that I can do that. I have done it. I have seen the results, but I went through a moment of doubt. And I think it's important that we acknowledge that we all have these moments. And as you said, Adrian, that we sit with our judgment and look where it comes from. In my case, I was really surprised that it came from myself. I was like, oh, there you go. There's something to work on. And it's incredible, because, I started my morning at 6 a.m. today with breathwork meditation, and I feel amazing. It's like, talking back, it's like, who was that chick, But I'm happy to share that, because I go through my fair share of ups and downs. And in particular, the last 2 weeks, I've felt it really intensely.
Yeah, and I really feel like you've hit the nail on the head there, in terms of, you said, but what I did, I went and worked on it. And I think this is what I'm trying to reiterate here. Like, if there's something that comes up for the people, watching and listening in, and there's that sense of judgment or self-doubt, it's so important to work with it and on it.
Yeah.
And to, really, do the journaling, talk to somebody, go and really, so that we can uncover it and move on. Because if it
go out into nature, sit with it, see what the lesson is. It's beautiful.
Absolutely.
I actually quite love it. I take it as a gift when those things come from me now, and not as an, oh, what's happening to me now? It's like, oh, that's another gift. Oops, what have I done? I changed with you. There you go.
And I think this gift, going back to the word alone, and there's two, alone, like being alone and strong and powerful.
Yeah.
That's when you can find that meditative time. That's where you can find the prayer time. That's where you can find the
Mm.
contemplation time, the journaling time.
Yeah.
In that, we are alone. So that's, you
Yeah.
know, that's sort of an example of powerful aloneness as
Yeah.
well.
It feels healthy and healing.
Yeah. So
Mm.
when people say I'm alone, I can say, well, in what way? In a powerful way, like in
Mhm.
terms of journaling
Yeah.
and meditating and going bush, or
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
terms of alone because I'm feeling bereft and lost and
Yeah.
unnoticed and uncared for, because they're
Mm.
two aspects. So I think, you know, for the people watching and listening in, get really clear on your own language of how you're using
Yeah.
alone and loneliness and
Mm.
alone, and start to
Yeah.
define it for yourself. You know, even maybe
Yeah.
write down some time, re-listen to what we've said in the recording,
Mm.
and
Yeah.
write those things down and start to really work on them and get a sense of it.
Mm.
And then start to transform that, I said, by finding other avenues to bring in what was lost.
Yeah.
Slowly, carefully, you
Yeah.
know, clearly. So
Mm.
so if it's, for instance, if it's intimacy, and we spoke about this a few times, you
Mm.
know, one of the biggest losses, particularly with, you know, a sexual
Yeah.
partner and an intimate partner, that loss is huge, particularly if you're
Mm.
tactile. You know, it's you
Yeah.
know, so tactile, and suddenly
Mm.
that is gone.
Yeah.
Then
Absolutely.
one can feel alone and loneliness, because it's like,
Mm.
where's my touch? Where's my nurture? Where's that?
Yeah.
So how do we find that in a new way? I'm not
Yeah.
suggesting it needs to be sexual. It could be going for a
Mm.
regular massage. It could be going
Yeah.
and
That's what I
hoping.
do, to be honest. Like, I go to regular kahuna massages, and I talk a lot about that, because my love language is physical touch. I need that, the cuddle, the touch, and yeah, it doesn't have to be anything sexual in that way, you know, but it is important. And that, with the connection of feeling lonely, uh, that can really help the physical touch of human beings. You know, like, not everybody has that same love language. Some people don't need that, the hugging, the touching. I do, you know, and I'm very, like, even my boys, like, we hug each other every day, you know, and there's obviously nothing sexual about that. They're my kids, you know, but the physical touch is important for all three of us, and we are just huggers, you know. And so was my husband. So I go every 3 weeks. I go and get this kahuna massage, like 2 hours, and I was like, oh, I'm actually hanging for my next one on the 8th of March. So I'm like, oh, can't wait. I'm always counting down the days, but it is so good for me because it's in such a safe and nurturing environment, and you know, it does something really beautiful to my body and to my whole energy field. It's really amazing.
Yeah. So another little bit of a resource, if you like, for
Mm.
people to drop into. What I'm suggesting is to start to journal and write down all those things that person that's now along with you, it's a loved one or family member or best friend,
Yeah.
what they gave you, what did you have between you,
Mm.
now lost, now
Yeah.
disconnected. And there's a whole list, so you can go, was it physical,
Mm.
emotional, mental,
Yeah.
spiritual, intimate,
Yeah.
creative, social,
I love
community?
that.
And if you can start
Mm.
to list those things down of where those losses were, then you can
Mhm.
start to implement things back into your life in
Yeah.
those aspects. For some people, you know, creativity, the
Yeah.
loss of creativity might not be an issue. The loss of intimacy
Mm.
may not be an issue, but for others it would be. So I
Mm.
think, once again,
Yeah.
get individual, write your own
Yeah.
list of
Yeah.
what you
Get
think
clear
now.
what you are missing.
Yeah,
Mm.
write your missing list. You know, what's missing now
Yeah.
in my life that was currently there with my friend, partner, loved one. And then once
Mm.
I also, if you name it, you can tame it. Yeah, if you can name
Mm.
it, you can tame it. So if you can start to name all those things of, you know, intimacy, sexuality, socially, spiritual, mental, and
Yeah.
what was the loss?
Yeah.
And then you can say, how can I re-implement that? I know
Mm.
for me, you know, with my partner, with Arlene, one of our deepest thing is we can sit for hours and hours and just talk, you know, about
Mm. Yeah.
all, you know, spiritually and emotionally,
Yeah.
and that would be one of my biggest losses, you know,
Mm.
if we separated, you know, through her death or such, because that communication
Mm.
is such a big part of my relationship. So for some
Yeah.
people, just the fact that they are missing that conversation,
Mm.
how can you find that conversation with somebody else that maybe it's never going to be the same, but it'll be,
Yeah. Of course not.
yeah.
And I also want to make a point here, Adrian, because for me, I always make a big point about this is not about replacing somebody. It
Yeah.
is about filling something that you are missing with something that you can create. It's like the claiming back the power in that, claiming back the realization of where your choices are. And we often feel like when we are going through grief, there's often this feeling of helplessness and that we've been robbed of our choices, but we haven't. We just don't look at the ones that we actually have. And that's what often happens in grief, that people look at the emptiness, the hole, the whatever, the lack of choices rather than looking at what they do have. And I want to also make a point here, because it is so hard for people to sit in this space of grief, and then people come and say, oh, just be grateful for what you have. It doesn't work like that. I totally get that. I don't want to be one of those who said, oh, just be grateful for what you have. That's not what I'm saying. But what I'm saying is, remember the choices that you do have. And for me, the choice is always, and how do I respond to this? Because, people go like, but I didn't choose that my husband passed. I mean, that's a very different story, because from a spiritual level, I believe that we have chosen that path as well, but that's set aside, so what can you choose? And you can choose what you do with the rest of your life. And, life is there for the living. If you're here, there's a reason for it. That's always my go-to. And we can find that reason. And we can allow ourselves the time to find it, because we're not going to find it like, in a split second. My husband died. Oh, here's my new reason to live. That's not going to work like that. We need to allow ourselves that space and time to go through, allow that healing in, and make those choices to do what you just suggested. Sit down, write that list. I think it's incredible. I love that.
Yeah. I think it's really important. So we, sort of get really sort of left brain logical. We write the list, we get clear on what's missing, and then we can start becoming more right brain and getting creative in terms of putting those things into our lives that are actually missing. So it's like, start with the logical, write it down, and then start to get creative and bring the right brain in. And then you get the balance of the left brain, right down activity. And I think that's really important. Find that balance as well. I think in terms of that sudden loss, and for some people it can be, so sudden. So some people it's, your partner's going to pass because they've been ill from. But when it's that sudden loss, it's the sense of having that part of you ripped away. It's like almost like some amputation in some sense. I'm sure I haven't experienced as deeply as others. I've lost some good friends, and I've not lost a loved partner, but just even some friends that have been passed over. It feels like a part has been ripped away. So how do we attend to that? How do we bring that back into our being, into our life? And I think that's a really important question. Sudden loss. How do we put that into a time frame even? Because for some people it's quite quickly, and other people it's years and years and years, and then you still get moments of flashbacks and So I think for everybody, once again, don't let the judgment of time come into play, because you have to find your own time frame. Because you're going to get people saying, hey, just get over it and move on. And you get others who say, no, look, just grieve, take
your time. And then for some people you move on too quickly. For others you need to move forward. There is a lot of judgment, especially from people who haven't even lived through it. So I often think, who are you to say how long it needs to take? And when I think about the retreats that we run, we have people there who've lost their partners as early as 3 months prior, and other people who've lost their partner 20 years ago. And who am I to judge how long it has to take, how long it takes for them, or why the pain is still so intense after 20 years like it is after 3 months? I'm not here to judge. I'm here to hold space and show them a different way, because often when people do get stuck in this for 10, 20 years, and people go like, well, you haven't moved on yet, there is something missing. And for me, it's put into one word, and that's allowing. To allow that healing in. And there's choice in that. There's a choice. Do I want to or do I not? And I often ask that. And I don't mean that in a mean way. I'm like, do you actually want to heal?
Yeah.
And that often puzzles them. Who's like, well, of course. And I'm like, are you sure? But like, I don't mean it in a mean way, but there's often a reason why we hold ourselves back, why we do stay stuck in the loneliness, in the grief. Why do we choose that? And that brings me to something where I often think about, that secondary gain that coaches often talk about. What do you actually get out of that? And I know that might sound very harsh for people who sit there in their loneliness, in their grief, and they might think it's completely mean of me to ask that. Yet I'm saying that from a space of absolute love and nurturing here. Just really, like, nobody's here to judge you. If you're listening to this, ask yourself the question. If you're still stuck in this, ask yourself the question, what do I get out of it? It might be as simple as, well, when I'm stuck in grief and in my loneliness, then this is my way of portraying how much I love this person. And that's okay. I just want you to know there are different ways to honor your loved one without having to feel that pain. I promise you there are different ways, and I would love for you to open your heart and mind to that, to just listen to these options. But yeah, I just wanted to bring that in because there is so much judgment around it, but never the right questions asked around it.
Yeah, it sort of brings us back to the topic we spoke about previously about that guilt, when
Yes, exactly.
guilt
Yeah.
and I think what you've reiterated there, Marie, and here, that thing called secondary gain, unless you're sort of in the psychotherapeutic world, a lot of people don't even understand what secondary gain is. I think it's really important for people to understand secondary gain of, why you continue to do something, even at your own detriment sometimes, or other people's detriment. And I think the exploration of secondary gain, the reason why I stay somewhere, is such an important question. So once again, I would highly recommend that, in whatever way people listening and watching in go to explore that. I think it's a really important factor of the healing process.
Yeah.
Go and find out why you're still staying in a particular space, particularly if it's detrimental to you or it's not conducive to, sort of living a fuller life. Because ultimately, whether your partner's here or not, you have to learn to full life again.
Yeah.
Well, I believe we owe that to ourselves as the spirit beings. We have to sort of get back into fulfilling the balance of what we give and receive in life. Yeah. And if you're stuck in sort of a stuck place of guilt or so, then you're not finding that place of giving and receiving, which is the ultimate.
And you're not in flow, and that's exactly where the stuckness comes in, And I want to bring one more topic in here, actually, Adrian, because what just came up to me when you spoke about that is the topic of victimhood. I understand that so well because this is where I grew up. I grew up in a sort of victimhood behavior generation. Like when I look back at our genetic lines, there was like victimhood behavior passed down, and I didn't know anything else. There was a lot of poor me, and there was a lot of intention through that poor me behavior. And I was about 30. Like it took me my first 30 years of my life till I recognized it. And of course I didn't like it. So I changed it. It took me another decade, but it was really important for me to change it. It was really important for me to not gain attention or energy or love through, oh, poor Marie, oh, your dad passed away, oh, poor thing, I had a lot of that, and I didn't like it. I couldn't put words to it because I didn't recognize it. But once I recognized it, I wanted to change it. And again, I'm sharing this, although this is vulnerable to me, but I'm sharing this because I want people to understand that you too might have grown up in a poor me mindset family, in a victimhood mindset family, where you are so used to gaining attention over something sad or bad in your life that you might subconsciously choose to stay stuck in this grief because this is where you get all the love and attention that you need. So we stay there because it feels so good to receive all the love and attention. But how much better would it feel to receive love and attention for something that is amazing, that is life-changing, that has a purpose, that helps other people around you and yourself? Don't forget yourself in that process.
Yeah.
You are important, you matter, you are allowed to receive love, but think about how you receive that love and what for. you can choose to receive it for something beautiful and amazing and empowering, rather than staying in this space of victimhood. It's not serving you. That's all I want to say.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, yeah, labels and victimhood, I often say they can often be used as trading tokens. And we have to be very cautious. So once again, do
Yeah.
the self-exploration and ask yourself, where am I perhaps playing victim? Where am I perhaps playing that label for that secondary gain, for that love, for that attention, to keep me in loneliness, because it's the guilt is so strong. How can I go and have another relationship or have a new friend? Even a platonic friendship sometimes is still guilty. So yeah, that exploration. I think today it's the message from me to the viewers is please explore and get beyond and really understand your loneliness, really understand what it means.
Creative child in me is waking up when you say that. Go out and explore.
Explore,
There's a whole world to be explored out there.
Explore that, the powerful alone being that you can be, in your meditations, in your journey forward. How can I be alone and powerful? There's a beautiful moment actually in Morgan Freeman plays Nelson Mandela in there's quite a few Nelson Mandela movies, but there's one where Morgan Freeman's playing, and it's where they take Nelson Mandela into Robben Island, onto the prison. And I've actually been to Mandela's prison in Robben Island. I played didgeridoos in his cell. I'm the only person in the world. I'm the only person in the world, as far as I know, to play didgeridoo in his cell. And
oh my God, that's so beautiful.
There's a moment in the movie where he and his comrades first get locked up in the prison, and in the ANC they had a cry, Amandla, Amandla, which is like their war cry. And they're all in their cells. It's late at night. Nelson Mandela stands up and he says, Amandla, Amandla, expecting everybody to respond, and there's silence.
Oh, wow.
And in that moment, I think it's one of the most poignant moments of the whole movie, and probably in Mandela's life, where he suddenly realizes, I am alone.
Oh, wow.
But in that aloneness, in that moment, is where he found his power. It's just, if anybody hasn't seen that, that one clip or that movie.
I haven't, and I do want to see it now. It sounds incredible.
As soon as that scene comes on, because I've watched it several times because he's one of my heroes, it's like I feel that, not sadness for his aloneness, but this
the power
joy that suddenly he's found this sense of power is aloneness, where he says, now I can move forward and I can lead, I can be the leader I'm destined to be, because I have to be, because I'm alone now. I don't have to ask anybody, I don't have to get anybody's opinion, because they didn't answer my cry. It's just, so for me, that aloneness can be so powerful. So for those watching and listening in, go and find that aloneness, go and find that power, because that's an incredible power. That aloneness.
I want to reiterate that as well, because I think mindset and having an open mind and heart is so incredibly important on that path, because I have shared this many times in my group that I did find empowerment in my grief, and that was so unexpected. That was the last thing I expected to find in grief, and I did find that, and it was really the starting point of my whole path, of my whole journey, because that realization, that feeling of, whoa, where did that come from, got me to write the book, which then planted a seed to create the movement, and then everything else followed, the journeys, the retreats. I really felt so gifted in that moment, as in that was such a gift to me, that feeling, that realization of having found empowerment in grief. And I truly believe that everybody can have that. I truly believe that. It all starts with one decision. It all starts with deciding to allow it in. If you want to come from decision, like more logical brain, or allowing from the more soft, nurturing, creative side, both, enter the whole same path of, embarking onto your healing journey. And you all deserve it. Everybody listening to this, you all deserve to heal. You all deserve an incredibly amazing, beautiful life. It's your choice what you do with it if you stay stuck in there. And I want to share one more thing. When we talk about loneliness, when we stay stuck in the grief, I often feel when we do that, we reduce our loved ones' amazing life to just that one single moment of their life. And I don't think that's fair. I don't think that's beautiful. I don't think that's the intention of anyone. But when you think about it, that's what we do. We reduce their entire life to their passing. And I much prefer to continue Rob's path, which was all built on love and connection and happiness and joy, and family was his biggest value. And my intention is to continue that and build on that, on the beautiful base that we built together. So you can all have that. I fully trust that.
Yeah. The image I get of that, Marie, is in that space, he has absolute freedom now because you're not keeping him contained. So it's like Rob's like so free in his beingness.
He's jumping around up there.
Yeah, because you're not holding him back in
Skipping at the beach. I've had these visions of him.
Yeah, you're not locking him in the grief box. Like the lid's off and he's now free to be his spiritual journey. What a journey going through grief, through loneliness, through being alone. But you know, coming back to that, explore, left brain, right brain, whatever it takes, get the support if you need support, and then start to look at that longer term vision of moving beyond loneliness and bereftness and disconnected, and find ways to reconnect. You know, it might be just simply going to a going out socially with a friend occasionally and talking about the partner, talking about the lost one in that way, rather than the lost talk about the positive things you did together. Keep their memory alive that way, as you suggested. So many positive things people can do. And I think a lot of it is taking the breath and doing one step today, one step tomorrow. As you know, it's what can be quite a long journey, but it all starts with a step. It all starts.
And I think the beautiful thing, what you said about reconnecting. I had this chat to my group. We run the Happy Healing. We've got a Happy Healing membership for those who have been to retreats or programs before. It's more like a bit of a maintenance thing, you know, where we catch up every 2 weeks and we chat and we see where everybody's at. And we had exactly that chat about, you know, the loneliness, the emptiness. And we came to that conclusion that, you know, the most important part, the first step always needs to be to reconnect to self. And the one thing that I hear so often in our movement is, my life will never be the same. Yet again, that sentence is often said from a space of victimhood. And I always say to them, yeah, of course not. Of course, you know, life will never be the same, you know. It's not meant to be the same. This is called your journey. It's not the same as it was before when one person, you know, exits that journey, gets off that train, you know, your future journey will be something different. And that's okay. It is okay, you know, and often we think, but it has to be that way. According to who? We are not the creator. We are not the ones, you know, creating our path, but we can co-create it. We can make decisions. We can make decisions whether we stay stuck at that stop or if we continue that journey and how that will look like. You know, there's this beautiful image that a lot of people have posted already. I don't know if you've seen it, where there's two guys on a bus and one is just looking at the wall the entire time. It's like trist and sad, and the other one's looking at the beautiful scenery out there, and it's just, and they're on the same bus, you know. And I think it's such a powerful picture. It depends on what window we look out, you know, where do you want to look out to? Against the wall or on the beautiful scenery and your beautiful future ahead? You do have a beautiful future ahead. You might not be able to see it right now, but it is there. It really is there. And I think that topic of connecting to self-love and being kind to yourself, in particular when it comes to this question, what's my secondary gain? In other words, what do I get out of it if I stay stuck? You know, the stuckness, is that victimhood behavior, yes or no? How can I change that? Because I'm not serving myself. This is be kind to yourself. That's my shout out to you. Be kind to yourself on that journey. Don't beat yourself up. I could be sitting here going like, oh, I lost 30 years in victimhood. Or I could go like, woohoo, I spent the next 20 years in freedom and learning and growing. And, you know, it's both there. It's all part of me. It all led me onto the path that I'm on now. And I'm grateful for everything I've experienced, everything.
Yeah.
So
It's a little bit, isn't it? I do this with some of my clients occasionally. I say, if you do your pros and cons list, you know, you can do pros and cons of staying in that space.
yeah, love that.
Cons of stepping out of that space, and just, you know, sit in one chair and physically sit then in another chair. It's always good to be in another chair.
I like that.
Even a different pen, that, you know, different color, and write down the pros and cons of now, where I am, and the pros and cons of where I might be in, say, 12 months' time, if I choose to do that work and to do the exploration and to look at
that is so beautiful. I love that.
Yeah, it's, you know, it's a great exercise. You know, I do it myself sometimes when I'm stuck. It's like, okay, pros and cons, Adrian, of staying like in this business, and the pros and cons of closing the business down and moving on to another, or relationship, or whatever it is in my life. So, you know, once again, back to a bit of sort of left brain, you know, writing. But that can be creative at the same time. And then just doing some of these exercises, it's sort of, it's like you get the cogs moving again if you do exercise.
I know how that feels.
And it's a nice feeling, isn't it? You know, it is. I know it's tough. I'm not taking that away. But when the cogs do start to move again, there is.
Now I actually enjoy it. It took me a while to jump back on my exercise bike, and now I miss it when I skip one day, and I'm like, oh my God, it's such a good feeling getting off that bike, and I love it.
So it's all about, you know, get the wheels moving on the locomotive, and once you're sort of moving a little bit, then you can find a steady rhythm for whatever rhythm that is for each individual person. So it's wow, it's such a huge topic, and I hope what we've imparted today has been, you know, useful for people. And once again, if there's any questions, you know, please ask, just type them in, and if I'm on the, I can answer, or you can answer.
Adrian is in our group, so you can just tag him in there too. If you want to address something in particular to Adrian or me, it doesn't matter. You can tag either or both of us, or just simply put the question in there. We'll make sure we'll see it. And I just want to finish off with my absolute favorite takeaway from what you have shared, Adrian, and that is the exercise with the 2 different chairs. I think this is so powerful, really powerful. You know, sit in one chair and think about what would happen if I was to stay stuck, and switch the other chair, different pen, different journal, or different page, and think about what would happen if I make different choices and I invite life back in and really wholeheartedly say yes to life. Any closing words from you, Adrian? Is there anything else that you want to wrap this up with? Or
I suggest this to, you know, to everybody, when you're doing this work, just be gentle and kind to yourself in the process. Be gentle.
Absolutely.
Every step of the way, you know, every step of the way. Am I being kind? Am I being gentle? Am I being nurturing? Am I being loving to self? Because ultimately, that is the key, being loving and kind to oneself.
Love it. I'm going to leave it exactly at that. I've got nothing else to add to that. I just want to say again, thank you so much for sharing space with me and for being here. And we'll see Adrian again, I believe, next month. We haven't looked at dates yet, but we'll definitely check that out. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you, everybody, for watching. If anybody wants to reach out to us, please do so in the comments. I'm sending you so much love. This is Adrian and Marie signing off. Bye for now.